more students to be in there working on projects, learning through a hands-on mode. We're also going to clear out some lockers to create more open common spaces for them to get together and collaborate and redo a little bit of the media center. Now the second question is contingent on the first, meaning that the second one won't pass unless the first does. So it'll read something similar to number 2 is contingent on the first one. So that's how that will go. So how did this begin? In the fall of 2019, a group of stakeholders to include district leaders and staff, parents, community members got together for the growth and long-term facility planning committee. It's a focus group talking about the needs of the school. Building assessment was done at the elementary school to see what the exact construction and mechanical needs were. Through this process, they came up to what we have now. Also, the demographic study, they looked at the longitudinal data, the growth of the district, determined over the next several years that our district will continue to grow. Eventually, it will plateau in there. One thing to be aware of, though, with that, as we have more students, that means more families, that means more contribution to our local economy, more contribution to our services, but also traditionally when we renovate a new school, or renovate an old school to make it look new, or build a new school, you even increase that population and development. Financial study was done, community listening sessions, so there were several of those where we were in environments just like this, presenting, community gave feedback, surveys were done, and then there was an open house. Then on July 26th, the Lake Park Audubon School Board made a decision to move forward with the bond referendum. So through this resolution, they chose to put this before the voters for a special election on November 2nd. The proposed plan represents the needs of the Lake Park Audubon School District to serve our students, staff, and community members for future generations. No matter what age our ages are, we commit to provide spaces that promote student success long after they leave our schools. Things have changed even in colleges. Learning modalities have changed in colleges. Learning spaces have changed in colleges. There's a lot of movable furniture in classrooms now where students can push everything out of the way and get together and collaborate. We're looking to mirror that. That's really what the needs of the 21st century are dictating. So we're trying to match that diversity to the experiences they need to be successful.
Thank you. I'm Craig Barton, elementary principal here at the elementary site in Ottawa. So just to talk about the need to start on things, our building here was designed in the 1950s. So it was designed dwelling for the uses at the time, which was a district, a K-12 building with a district office in it. So today we're using it for different things. Our special education classrooms were the superintendent's office. Back then, the 3rd grade classroom was a shop. Our music room was a stage, and just different pieces of how it was designed. Then we're also out of space. We have 28 new students to the district this year at the elementary. We have both teachers and students working or learning within what used to be custodial spaces. We're out of whether it's storage space or others, or even Dr. Godfrey's been making an effort to be at the elementary. We get creative in where we kind of house him for the day as well. So we're kind of out of space regardless throughout there as well. And then we have an amazing staff that do great things with the building, but they're being very innovative with their instruction and our initiatives, but the building doesn't always reflect that. So they put time and effort into making it work with the space they have, and it's just exciting to think about where they could take it if they had a space designed for the current uses in there as well. And then there's some maintenance needs too. So some of that's with our HVAC, our heating, and our cooling. We've had days already this fall with 90-degree days in classrooms throughout. Over on the corner over there, there's a crack on our gym wall that you're starting to notice on the outside as well, and there's just some maintenance that can't be ignored any longer. We'll have to invest into that. We'd rather renovate throughout the building. And then we also want to make sure, as we already know, we have a staff that's second to none. We have regionally competitive, above average communities we're really fortunate to be a part of, and we want to make sure our building reflects that. We give tours, and at times we have families that kind of do that drive-by test. And we want to make sure our school buildings look like that of our neighbors too, to attract the best.
Good evening. I'm Mark Meyer, the high school principal. I'm going to go over the need for CT space and collaborative space. As we try to prepare our students for the 21st century, there's been a lot of changes in the CT world, and we want to be able to provide our students with that. Presently, our existing industrial tech area has woods, welding, metal work, and plasma cutters all within the same area, which creates a safety concern. And our adjacent classroom is very small, so we have a large amount of students that want to take the class, but we don't have the space to do that. So we're looking to expand our CT space as we go through this referendum.
The process, as Dr. Goffrey acknowledged, has been a 2-year process that we've engaged the community in to get feedback, and then we've also brought in ICS and other firms to do an adequacy, and that just compares our current building to the Minnesota Department of Education standards. So their recommendations, you don't have to meet those thresholds. I would say 90% of our building were under the best practice or the recommended thresholds of the Department of Education. So that was part of that need, and then loudly the community, staff, and other stakeholders really thought investing and modernizing in our elementary was a needed endeavor for our district. So with that, part of that plan, we'll, based on that community feedback and stakeholder, bringing you that, the 2 different questions on there. The first question would be providing more space at the elementary and modernizing our building, including maintenance and other aspects of it. And then, as Mr. Meyer acknowledged, the second part of that question would be adding shop space at the high school to create more hands-on experiences and get kids for career readiness to support out in our communities and work here locally. So with that, on question 1, part of that is to provide them more space. So we talked about we have students and staff in closets now. As you walk out today, if you look down this back hallway, we're fortunate the Lakes Crisis Center would be an example. They'll come in and do free groups for our students, and it's social emotional health, it's counseling, it's certainly a need. COVID's even made it a bigger need. The space we're able to offer them right now is 1/4 of a storage space. I say that with Casey up there, it's also half his office, 1/4 of the storage space, and 1/4 of our, if we have any presenters come in. We have BTD from Detroit Lakes wanted to come in. They are really generous. They said their staff could come 4 times a year to present to our students. What would be most efficient and less costly for them would be able to pull students and do a grade level presentation at a time. Right now they have to go through the classrooms because we just don't have the space to accommodate that. So within this too, we'd have some collaboration learning spaces. We could partner better with our community and just have more of those natural learning environments for our students as well. Part of that also, solution to that would be adding those collaboration spaces. There'd be a 9-story addition. We'll see what that looks like in a little bit. It'd be built where the greenhouse is currently at. The greenhouse would be moved on site and kept here at the elementary. But we'd have 9 classrooms and then a 2-story addition to accommodate that student growth that we've been seeing and anticipated for years to come. Then our kitchen would be the other new space that you would see, that would get larger. It'd be under one roof. Right now the kitchen, you gotta walk into the cooler to walk through that to get to the freezer, and then out and around the corner to get to the dry storage. So as you can imagine, not the most efficient setup. Again, we have staff second to none. So they make all the work with a smile each and every day. But again, it's exciting to think what they could do with a kitchen space that was built to be a kitchen space. Part of that also, I should mention, that kitchen space would be moved over here to try to make more use of it in evenings and other times, a lunchroom space. Like our high school has that kind of gathering space outside for sporting events or other local community events, so we'd like to provide that here too. So we have a little bit larger gathering space, but then it also functions a little bit more efficiently for us during the day as well. And then a big piece, so we are adding on square footage, but a big piece of it is modernizing the rest of our school. I was talking to Gary out in the hallway. When we tour, if someone has a 1st and a 5th grader, it's really a have and have not feeling to that. Our 5th grade rooms were built 10 years ago. Our 1st grade rooms were built in 1956. And then we have some in the 90s and 70s. But our building now feels like 4 different editions. A lot of people, we pride ourselves that we have a family atmosphere and we're a small school. There's lots of values that come with that and really reflect our communities. But almost every single parent that tours it the first time, or staff that tours it the first time, comments how large our school is. And if you break it down into square footage, it's not a huge school. I've been in larger ones, but it just feels a little bit disjointed in like 4 additions more than one space. We really want to make it feel like that one space for our students and our community. And the big investment in this one would be in our learning spaces. The majority of it will go into updating classrooms across all the learning spaces with common furniture and supports, and then looking at to design our building for current uses. So some of those things will be a special education suite that's centralized. Some of the biggest hardship for our students right now is transitions. It's not something they need to do, it's not something we need to be working on, it's just a result of the layout of our building. So we're creating some hardships and hurdles for some of our students and staff that we could, with an intentional design, hopefully eliminate some of those. We have bathrooms in our early childhood, which go a long ways, and keep investing in that preschool. Our nursing office currently right now doesn't allow a stretcher to fit into it. We found that out a hard way with emergency personnel on site the other year. So it's just little things like having a nursing office that can accommodate a medical emergency. A lot of our building that was built back, that met standards back then, but is no longer up to code with ADA. So that'd be the bathrooms, our playground, and our locker rooms will get updated so we're ADA compliant as well. And then new bleachers in our in both spaces as well. Another piece, as we talked about, was just the maintenance and the site improvements. So whether it's our membrane around our sidewalks, if you look at the outside, our sidewalks have moved a couple inches out from our building. We do keep filling them to stay on top of maintenance, but as you know, in a Minnesota winter, ice is going to get in there and expand and it's done damage within there. Similar to whether it's the crack up here or right now I had a pipe break, so we had to, we got a couple tubs collecting water in the hallways. We've got water in the first grade wing come up through the floor and through the ceiling. So really it's just modernizing the mechanical systems as well. We have asbestos tiles in our first and second grade wing that was built in 1956, as well as lower ceilings that doesn't accommodate for all the mechanical improvements that we need. So that would be the one exception. To modernize that, we'd actually have to tear it down and rebuild to be handicap accessible, and just cost savings wise, the amount of investment. On the end, if you know where the kindergarten rooms are, like Mrs. Johnson's or first grade Mrs. Stahlberger's, those were built in the 70s. So we still feel like, to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars, we can gut those and modernize them without having to build new walls or move walls around as well. But every corner of our school will get touched with that. A couple exceptions would be classrooms that were built 10 years ago. A couple of them will be repurposed. If they're continuing to be classrooms, there's not going to be a large investment because they were modernized 10 years ago. Our front entrance was built 10 years ago. It looks nice. There's not a huge need to put a bunch of money into that. And then our mechanical, our boilers are also within that 10 to 15 year range. So there's not a large investment needed in those spaces. But outside of those 3 spaces or 4 that I mentioned, the rest of the building will, head to toe get modernized. As well as some sidewalks we talked about out there, but sidewalks will get modernized. The bus pickup will allow, we can have 1 shift of busing. It's another thing, we have 2 shifts, can create some behavior challenges and logistical challenges, and it's just due to we don't have enough space to park all of our buses. It's not a need of our district, it's just accommodating the space that we have. And then another important piece, and it came mainly from the community, but within our staff too, was parking at the elementary for evening activities. So next to the bus garage, we'll have to resurface that playground to be handicap accessible. When we pick that up, we're going to move it back a little bit and then have a parking space in front of that for events, and then staff parking too to meet that community need and feedback.
More details on question number 2, which would be increasing space in the CTE career technical area. We would be looking to add 1,100 more square feet. This would improve the space, functionality, and accessibility for our students to be able to have a woods class, to be able to have a separate area for a metals class. This would increase different work for us to be able to buy different things that are with our plasma maker, to be able to work with BTD, to be able to work with team on different things that they can bring into and teach our students. Moorhead, Perm, and Detroit Lakes all have a career academy, so we're trying to create an environment like YLPA. In my opinion, it's small class sizes, and I want to be able to provide our students with 21st century learning. And I know Mr. Godfrey mentioned last time, It is 2021, so we're already 21 years into 21st century learning, and I want to be able to provide our students with that.
And then these are the pictures of some of what it could look like with a successful project or based on voter feedback. So on the top, we're looking at the elementary building. We're actually looking at it from the playground looking in. If we took a picture from the front entrance, it would be pretty similar, because again, that was built 10 years ago. So we're going to see more of a difference. This is that 1970s portion that we'll kind of gut and modernize. And then this is the 1956 wing. Oh, I touched something, Casey. Pointers would have been the way to go. I can keep talking. Sorry about that. But the 1956 wing. So as you can kind of see, that's where we're looking at from there. That'll also impact our bus pickup as well. And we're just really happy. I think it looks similar to, once you get to see it, to our high school, which, as we all know, is a point of pride in our communities. Thank you, Casey. Hindsight, I could have did that. But then that's the addition space. I won't touch the screen this time. But right up over here is that 2-story, 9-classroom addition. That would be where the greenhouse is currently at. So that's the biggest answer to that space need, and then the rest is really modernizing it in there. You can see all the buses. That's where there's some improvement in the bus pickup in that as well. And then the bottom right is what the look of the interior is anticipated to be. That's actually one of the collaboration spaces as well that we'll have built throughout the school, whether it's community partners coming in or students going out to work with their other classmates or other classes in their grade level or across grade levels. But then it also gives you a feel of what the whole school will look like and really have that common theme and that common interior to it as well. Our floor plans here, it's all on lpapavetheway.com, so we can reference it there, and I can show you out in space here if you're on site. But the big piece there is just showing how we're touching each and every corner and the investment in those learning spaces. These are blue when you look online. That would be the addition space. This would be that 1950s portion that's going to be torn down and rebuilt. And then everything else that's colored is what's going to be renovated, gutted, and updated. Some of the spaces that are white that aren't going to be, these would be those classrooms I referenced that were built 10 years ago. They're going to be used for classrooms. They look really nice. They're in great shape now, so there's not going to be a lot of investment in those spaces. The mechanical area you can see over there. And then the gym technically isn't getting a total redo. It's more paint and bleachers. So you can kind of count that in that middle area there. Some of the highlights of layout too I could feature would just be having our early childhood, to continue to have them there, have space for Head Start if they came back, or daycare or preschool options, special education more centrally located. This is where we're at right now, so the cafeteria would get moved to here. And then some of our other noisy learning spaces like music or Phi-Ed would all be grouped together here. We're currently, like, our lunchrooms next to our library, our music rooms next to a second grade room. It all works functionality, but if we had our choice, we probably wouldn't put some of those spaces right next to each other. So it'd be an opportunity to really be thoughtful in that layout. And we'll continue to seek stakeholder and staff feedback to tweak these and continue to improve them as well. For site improvement, some of the highlights here to point out, this would be where that event parking would go, or staff parking as well. Currently, right now, that's about halfway down is where our playground sits, so that would get moved back since we're redoing that surface space. A lot of the equipment on that playground was purchased through the PTO not too long ago. That will be reused, that's in good shape. The little kid playground, as the kids would call it, on the other side of the street. They bring me bolts once a week of things that are falling off, and that's a lot of that would be replaced and updated. But any equipment that's in good shape would be reused to save a taxpayer cost. But it would be resurfaced, and that would allow us to put in that parking lot as well. This is the bus garage for kind of reference there. Here's the bus pickup, which will be expanded, so we just functionality there. And you can see part of that expansion is on the house that was purchased through the district too, just to give a look at the layout there.
First of all, on this portion up here, this would be our current library on the second floor. What we'd be looking to do with our collaborative space, MDAs requiring schools to create a safe space. So this would fit perfectly into this concept as we move forward. Our high school is awesome. It's 2014, it's great. But what we'd be looking to do here would be, right here is where we currently have the beautiful windows in the front where the sunlight comes in. But currently our bookshelves are over here and our students are over there, so they never get to get into the sunlight. So we'd be looking at flip-flopping the two, so then our students' collaborative space would be over here. Right now, currently, this line that goes down right here is a block wall. So we'd be looking at opening that up to be glass. That would create your safe space where we could have students working here. We could have students in these bays up here. And here are our current locker space. What we do with them is we create collaborative space. So this would be the front entrance into the school with a collaborative space there, here, and then over into this locker bay. With open glass here, it would be a wide open area where students could work in the library, they could work out there and still have somebody watching them. Where right now, staff are asked to, like, if you're gonna have students on the hallway, that they need to be supervised. So this would be a perfect opportunity to provide the collaborative space. Other things it allows our students to do is to do hands-on projects. It increases cognitive skills. They're able to also do, like, learn by example versus just listening to the teacher talk in front of the class. So there's a lot of benefits to the collaborative space. On the other side here would be our CT space. So currently, what this would be looking at is, right now when I say that our classroom is small, so this whole open spot here would be a classroom. And then in the background, you've got glass doors here. Then you've got a glass door that would be over here. Then would be the two separate, one would be for the woods area, and the other one would be for the meadows area. So then we could have speakers come in and be able to speak in there. We could have classrooms that will also be out there. So that would be the concept that the CT would be looking for. And I think it'd be awesome if you're looking at the pictures of it.
So some of the impacts of the voting referendum would just be having our main goal is to continue to have a regionally competitive elementary, but we also want to be responsible to Audubon and our communities to not leave a building in the middle of town. We like our central location, allows us to partner and be close to lots within our communities, and we hope to be a point of pride of Audubon and our greater communities as well. For our students, we want to continue to give them an education that's second to none, but also the space that they deserve and the space that looks like their neighbors. For our staff, who we've mentioned are already doing amazing things, provide a building that's designed and built for our current functions and our current practices. And then a district that would allow us space to grow for our families that continues to move in, not only as a district in the school, but our communities within as well. And then it would create more efficiencies within our maintenance as well to continue to update and enhance and keep our spaces looking modern out there.
So, as we look at the different districts around us and look at the tax impact, you have that slide?
That's next.
Okay, so Mr. Barr will go over that. So we're relatively low on that end as far as our tax impact overall to our stakeholders. Our goal is, in the long term, I'll let you know, we're going to go through a strategic planning process, a little bit of visioning this year. One of those goals is going to be add more innovation in our schools. Again, to meet the 21st century, as Mr. Myers said, we're 21 years into it, and we're still talking about preparing our kids for it. You know, they say our kindergartners now will have jobs that aren't even created yet. So we need to start creating an environment where they can learn. Another thing is continue to have a balanced budget, continue to have that surplus we need to carry over each year to ensure that any emergencies are taken care of. We want to have smart hiring practices, that means competitive salaries. So all this is going together in our strategic planning. But we do know that part of that strategic planning is a building that's adequate, a building that's equitable for our students, and a building that gives us the opportunity to provide the opportunity so they can be competitive in the labor force when that time comes.
So the improvements, of course, there's a cost to it that would be asked of taxpayers to decide on November 2nd. With that, there'll be two separate questions on it. They're independent. The first question would have to pass in order for the second question to go through. So the second one is dependent on the first one. That first one, as we talked about, is modernizing throughout the elementary. It includes an addition and some of the site improvements with parking and the sidewalks. That would be $21.63 million. We'll see on another slide. With a $250,000 house within the district, it'd be $9.46 a month is what that one breaks down to. Question 2 would be that lab and collaboration space for more hands-on opportunities at the secondary. That'd be a $1.33 million taxpayer investment, and that would round that up to, for a $250,000 house within our district, it would be a $10 cost. So I was off slightly there, $9.42 on the first one. I guess it's 6 cents. So that's what that would look like. But on our, for those that want to know their exact one, you can call either the district office or the elementary office. We would certainly help you with this. But you can also go on lpapaytheway.com. If you do /cost, or when you're there, if you want to know tax impact, you can type in your market value, and it'll tell you the impact, whether question 1, 2, or both are successful. This breaks it down as well for residential, seasonal rec, commercial, and that as well. And all this information we can provide for you, or it's also on that lpapavetheway.com as well. For, as Dr. Godfrey acknowledged, currently Lake Park Audubon within our region is the second to lowest tax impact for area residents. Frazee Fergus is below us, but they are looking at an operating referendum to come up as well, so it may be that we could be even lowest within there. The second blue line would show if both questions passed on that, we would move above Pelican Rapids and the tax impact on local districts, but still below our neighbors, Detroit Lakes and Holly. And then if you look at similar sized schools, whether it's Hewlin, Hinderdal, or Norman County East, this one's still DGF there as well. But we still feel like we're offering value to our taxpayers and trying to keep things as minimal as we're able to. Part of that cost too, which is different than the last time we went for a building project at Lake Park Audubon, thanks to advocacy and Minnie's parts, schools and agriculture as well down at the state level. There's now an aid to school tax credit. That allows agriculture to be taxed for the state to pick up part of their tax share. So it's only on school taxes, but it is everything besides 1 acre in their homestead. 60% currently is covered through the state of Minnesota, and by the time this will go in impact, it'll be up to 70%. One benefit of that is it's not shifted to everyone else within the district. It's actually picked up through the state of Minnesota, so that tax impact just comes away from residents and off of our agriculture owners. They still are taxed at the regular rate on 1 acre in their homestead, but it's all of the acreage outside of that.
This slide will go over the voting information. So we have the early absentee vote, which will be at the high school. So if you're interested in that, it goes from September 17th to November 1st. And then our regular vote will be on Tuesday, November 2nd. If you have any questions, call the office, talk to one of us, but everything is on the website on Pave the Way. But Susie is taking the absentee ballot at the high school right now. Other than that, are there any questions you got?
What would the timeline be if it is approved and it passes? And when would you start, and when would you anticipate, like, entire renovation and construction here? I mean, that looks like it's a pretty extensive
Yes.
project.
Can I throw this to Lori?
We have Lori Christensen from ICS, who's our consultant.
Yeah, 2 years, so it'll be built over 2 years. We'll check with our construction manager. My first ask, but then they'll tell us if logistically it makes sense, is to work on the addition first before we tear down that first grade wing and lose some classrooms there. But it would be built over 2 years to try to lessen that impact to students on that too. So as much as we can is going to happen in summers, of course. but then we'll try to be intentional of what gets built first to try to help with some of that growing headache that we would have. So it'd be over a 2-year build. Yeah, smart to pick up on that. I can mention it. Yeah, over 2 years. Sometimes you try to get it into one, but just it's every classroom. You know, every classroom but 3 is going to get renovated. So certainly that doing it over 2 years might help us logistically pull that off.
And Craig, if I can just
Yep.
add to that too, is part of the process is it's public money, so it has to be publicly bid. So there is an engineering and design phase that would go into effect if it's approved. And that process will be taking in user groups and information and get the project design so that contractors can bid the project. And that can be publicly bid. That process alone can take 6 to 9 months depending on the size of the project. So really, if all goes well, this time next year you would be moving dirt to start on the actual construction side of it. If all the stars align.
So given, you know, the recent run-up in construction costs and materials with what's going on out there, you know, when were these figures developed? I mean, as far as the cost estimates of what you would need then to, you know, to do these, and will those hold, you know, with, of course, everything could change in 2 years. I mean, you know, stuff could come back down too, but I mean, your lumber is up and all these other building materials.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's kind of the million-dollar answer no one has. But what we really did is we have been watching the market, and so ICS has been evaluating bids as they've been coming in over the last. I mean, we always have that, but then even like last spring, last winter, where are bids coming in? So up until the board made a decision to move forward, we were tracking on where we're seeing those construction costs at. And looking at that to make sure we're still in line with the cost. And then we anticipate that bids won't go out for another year after the board makes a decision to even go to the voters. So we do put an inflation factor, and that's to accommodate that year before you actually can go onto the contractors. And typically you're right around that 3.75% of inflation. So we do that to kind of cover those costs that go up. But
There's also a 7% contingency on both. Should we run into any snags or something like that?
yep, and
The beauty is, I heard construction materials starting to come
They
down.
are starting to come down. Yeah, like that's what I said. You know, a year from now, you know, things can adjust. You know, the supply bottleneck that's happening.
I think that would be, you know, the nice thing about waiting that out. That's probably the biggest issue right now, is getting materials.
Right.
I left Kenmare, we were doing a project there, and it's on hold just because you can't get materials.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've been hearing months waiting for order, commercial windows and steel and that sort of thing.
I've heard steel is the worst right now. Steel is harder than lumber, but I think that period of time we have between, you know, it passing and bidding out, this time for that supply and demand kind of equalize a little bit.
Right. Well, it's good to know that, yeah, you have that, like the contingency and the inflation
be locking the low interest rates and the material costs will go down.
Yeah, which we know.
I'm not gonna promise
now's the
that.
time to do something like that.
Yeah.
So
As a
that-
banker, you know that, I'm sure you probably have your own informal projections of where the interest rate's gonna go.
Right, right. You know, sounds like, you know, there's gonna be movement for a year better yet. It's kind of what they're predicting at this point.
Well, that's good.
Yep.
that is good.
Good if you're on the borrowing end.
Yeah. Yeah. For most of us here.
Yeah. So.
Any other questions?
Oh, I do have one, and it's probably for Lori, and that's, what's your specs or your intention as far as mechanical and electrical, mostly the HVAC?
Okay, well, for the mechanical system or the HVAC, we are renovating the majority of the elementaries, except for, like, Craig said, the boilers will stay because they're newer. But we'll bring on our engineers, and they'll be designing it to today's standards with ASHRAE standards. They have to meet code, the ventilation rates will meet what the code requires at the time of design. I don't know, I mean, sometimes they'll do displacement ventilation, sometimes they'll do a VAV system. It really is looking at what our construction budget allows, what's our facility allow, and what is we'll get our custodians in here too, and just kind of, what kind of system are they looking for too? We'll give recommendations and evaluate the different opportunities.
Based on my experience, I wouldn't consider anything other than displacement ventilation too lazy. And you can say you're gonna have a code-based building, well, that's great, it's 15 CFM, but that doesn't really tell you much, other than you're getting exchange. You're not bringing in, to me, you're not bringing in enough fresh air, depends on how you set it up. But with displacement ventilation, initially, my experience, and you're familiar with it at Elk River, it costs us a little bit more per square foot. At that time, which was in the early 2000s, it was $30 versus $35. $30 for typical, you know, ceiling in and out type mixed air. But we did a study in those two University of Minnesota School of Medicine, and the additional $5 per square foot that it cost us, we tracked it for 3 years. The payback was less than 2 years. And now you have 100% fresh air, you know, and that was at this desiccant, you know, where we had energy wheel and so on. So there was it was a complicated system. But that was our number one priority because air, and especially in an elementary building, is where your kids are, you know, their lungs are forming and so on and so forth.
And the displacement keeps it so it's not so mixed, it keeps it low and kind of hits the body
Yep.
and hits that ventilation, yeah.
And you get 100% fresh air.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
and to me, I would back off on, you know, something else and go with the ventilation, because that's something that you're gonna be paying for 40, 50 years. And if it's, in general fund, I'm very familiar with general fund, that's where you have trouble, you know, balancing that, because you never have enough money in general fund. By spending a little bit more money on building a good, solid building that, you know, good envelope and everything with the insulation and good air, you're gonna save money. And it's gonna save the general fund, and that helps keep the building afloat.
Well, appreciate that advice, and then obviously the pandemic, there's even
Well,
more
yeah,
push that way
I
too.
don't know
but-
if there's, you know, some COVID money that can be used for that as an upgrade. I'm not sure I follow that, because that's not in the business.
But just the importance of that too, fresh air.
To me, that's number one. And we found in Elk River that, they didn't care what the paint was, but boy, the air was important.
and Ron, too, now the code requires a CO2 monitoring system, so that also helps you. One, it helps you make sure you have enough ventilation in your space, but two, it saves on energy, because with the code, you have to design each space as if it were need the ventilation. So that control system too will be incorporated in this building. A full digital control system would be, because that's the beauty of it too. I know when they increase the ventilation rates to meet healthy environment, a lot of people looked at the utility bills and said, oh, we can't afford to operate that. Well, then they came back and said, okay, now we'll put in control systems to help monitor it and also keep us healthy. So that's,
Yeah, it's kind of deceiving. I just put in a year ago, a 96% efficient furnace. And the first thing they told me is, don't touch the fan. It's a variable speed fan, and don't touch it because it'll ramp up and down, which is kind of what you're talking about. And I thought, oh boy, how's that going to affect my energy, my electricity? Well, it's actually, my cost of heating and cooling has gone down because it's ramping up when it needs to, it ramps down when it doesn't. And that's essentially what you're talking about with the CO2 bill. Yeah, anyway, my pitch is HVAC is number one, regardless of what you do, because that's something that will save you money down the road. And to me, it's the most important, especially in elementary.
Thank you. Yep, looking out for our students' health and safety.
Yep.
Anything else, guys? If you can think of anything else that comes to mind anytime, call me. Call Mr. Barton, Mr. Meyer. Be more than willing to get together and chat with you.
I'm disappointed there aren't more people from the community.
Yeah, we anticipated there would be, but
There are a couple, I think, on YouTube, or where,
yeah, we're streaming this, so
So
they are
we're-
able to watch it.
Just your part, so now.
yeah,
you're
right
on.
now, now you're off, yeah, you're off
You're
the.
gonna be even bigger celebrity.
But thank you to your doc, we appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And we'll go out, I know, I don't know if I mentioned it tonight, but any other group that wants, will be Cormorant Lions, or I'll run off the Audubon Fire Department, but I know, two of you are connected, so if there's other groups that want us to come out, we'd either host them here, or we'll go to meetings too and present. It's a little bit shorter spiel too, we'll keep it to 10 minutes, but anybody that wants to hear it, we wanna come share. So if anyone asks you to, just say, hey, call the school, they'll come share. But yeah, thank you for coming.
Yep, thanks, have a good night, guys. Again, give us a call if you have any questions. Not sure if I've got the hard mic.
Okay.
Born in Detroit.